By way of introduction, um, my name is Rob Payton. I have been a director and a DOP for the past more years than I want to remember. I spent 15 years based out of Cape Town, so I've got a reasonably good knowledge of the industry in South Africa. Uh, I work internationally, the States, UK, and that was all going extremely well until COVID came along. And work dried up overnight because most of my work was overseas. And I was asked if I'd help set up a virtual production stage for ARRI in London. As a result of that, I was onboarded for 3 weeks, and I'm still doing that 3.5 years later. So my role now is very much supporting productions. I consult for agencies. I help people build virtual production studios, and largely help people transition into a virtual world. There's a lot of myths. There's a lot of stuff spoken about virtual production that isn't great. So the plan, and we've only got an hour, and I would much rather be doing this with you in a virtual studio so as I could be more hands-on. We've only got an hour, but we'll try not to make this death by PowerPoint. If you've got questions, there'll be plenty of time for a Q&A at the end. If there's any pressing questions, by all means, drop them into the chat, and I think Kathy's going to monitor the chat, and we can pick them up as we go along. And yeah, I think what I'm aiming to do is to sort of run you through the basic principles, when it might be suitable, and more importantly, to show you some case studies. I've probably worked on about 60 productions now that have involved virtual production, and seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, so just to kick off, I'm just going to go very briefly through what is virtual production, and we'll take it back. There's a couple of quotes here from people from post houses who've done their best to describe virtual production, probably better than maybe I would. Basically, virtual production is any computer-aided production where you're introducing augmented elements. Traditionally filmed in a VP studio, you'll hear the name volume bandied around. I mean, the one thing you're going to need to be aware of is there's a whole new glossary of stuff. It needed a new dictionary. I was so confused when I first came into this. You're learning a new language as much as anything else. Yeah, the physical and digital elements. I think this is really important for commercials, because largely when we talk about virtual production for commercials, we are talking about blending a foreground element with a background element. There's so many different acronyms that are going on here, depending on your script, depending what you're doing. All of those could be relevant to your production. The principles really involve a camera talking to a computer, which in turn is talking to a screen. And the computer knows whereabouts in the space the camera is sitting. And there's a lot of phys data, which is lens data, height data, going back and forth between the camera and Unreal Engine. So consequently, the background interacts with the foreground elements, so you create true parallax. If that's not overly technical, ultimately what you're doing is your foreground is blending seamlessly with your backgrounds. So we're in commercials, generally we're in a situation where we're using our traditional crafts of the cinematographer, of the art department, of talent. They're performing. In general, it's the background elements that are changing and that are coming from a digital source. And there's all sorts of advantages of that, which I'll move on to. So a typical LED volume, and there are a few in South Africa now. I was responsible for helping to set up Filmscape. I know there's also Three Peaks in Cape Town as well as Filmscape, and I believe there's one permanent volume, Brits up in Joburg. And also in addition to that, we're finding that productions are having them as pop-ups. But what you'll find when you'll go into a volume is certain key elements. And, critical to that, the most important is the in-vision wall. That's physically what your camera sees. It's physically what is providing the background emissive lighting. and it's generally a low pixel pitch, very, very high quality color screen. That's the minimum you're going to find when you go into an LED volume. On the right, you see there's a back wall. That's what we'd say is an out of vision screen. It's there. What I find it works extremely well for is giving the talent points of reference. So instead of when you're working in green screen, you're saying, hey, interact with that bit of camera tape I've just stuck on the wall. They're physically seeing what they're doing. They're physically seeing where they're going. They can interact with it. It's also providing reflections in glassware, in mirrors. So a useful bit of kit, the back wall. After that, you have side screens. These I compare very much with traditional film soft lights. The difference being that on the screen, instead of just having a light source, you've got your screen content. So again, it's providing very believable lighting on the talent. You'll find, and we can talk about budgeting and we can talk about crew sizes. What you'll find is that your lighting crew is reduced substantially. And I hate to say it because a lot of my best friends are gaffers and sparks, but lighting crews do come down significantly when you're working in an LED environment. The ceiling, which is something of a luxury for a lot of setups, but absolutely necessary if you're doing car work, that provides not only light, but it provides reflection. And I'll show you an example, an Uber commercial that we did last year with Robert De Niro and Asa Butterfield that perfectly illustrates why you need a ceiling. I believe the volume in Cape Town at Filmscape has a permanent one. The other ones can be brought in. So that's sort of the basic geography that you'll get within a virtual production. I guess more importantly is when a script arrives on your desk, should you be considering virtual production and what should you be considering virtual production for? So there's a bit of a cheat sheet here. I will run through these. Anywhere where there's multiple geographical locations in one script, obviously you whiz yourself around the world at a flick of a switch. We've been seeing it used more and more where there's new product launches and there's secrecy of a production has been an issue. I did a campaign that was the equivalent of, I don't know what the South Africa, like computer warehouse kind of campaign that went back to the same location for weeks and weeks and weeks. If we could have built that set digitally, it would have saved us a lot of time, a lot of pre-light, a lot of those additional days when you're building a set and pre-lighting. Locations that are unattainable, again, anywhere that's difficult to shoot, anywhere where you'd struggle to get permissions or where it would be prohibitively expensive. What you can do with a virtual environment is you can go into that environment, maybe take a LiDAR scanning crew in. So instead of saying, I want to bring 40 people in here for 2 days, you're saying, I want to bring 2 guys in here for 4 hours. And you're much more likely to get your permissions to do that. In the UK, for example, most airports charge per crew member per hour because they want you in there for the shortest amount of time and with the minimum number of people. Heritage properties, places where they don't want a big film crew traipsing around, all of those lend themselves very much to virtual environments. It's a no-brainer whenever you're considering green screen, use virtual, consider virtual. If your production has green screen, consider virtual. The pre-light times come down massively. As I said before, your artists interact with their background. And it has huge advantages over green screen in the majority of instances. There may occasionally be something where you don't know yet what your background's going to be, or you've got a client who hasn't decided, or you've got some point of sale stuff that needs to go in there. Sure, you can use green screen for that. But what you can do with virtual is you can just have certain elements of your frame as green screen. So that's quite interesting. You don't have to say it's green screen or virtual. You can have bits of your frame that are green screen if you know that you've got a client that changes their mind every 5 minutes. And we've all had those. Anywhere where you need to guarantee weather, less of an issue in South Africa, but certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, weather cover is very expensive. And if you want to guarantee weather, go into a virtual environment. Out of this world locations, anywhere that's unworldly. that gives you a good example. Sustainability and client and agency demanding it. This is getting really interesting now. When we set out the reasons for working in virtual, sustainability was on the list, but it was kind of down 8, 9 in terms of why we'd use it. Probably number 2 now in terms of clients pushing for sustainability. It's probably the second most important reason. I'll tell you the first one later, but it's probably the second most important reason why people consider virtual production. Where the client and agency demands it. Now, this is pretty contentious because we're getting to a point now where certain clients are mandating VP. Now, my belief is that the creative should always lead. The script and the creative should dictate the technology, but we are seeing things, particularly where clients' core business cannot be green. So we're talking about Maersk, the shipping line, BP, Ford. Many people are basically where their core business isn't green. They're saying, okay, how can we be as green as possible? Our commercials must be done virtually. Sorry, I'm not monitoring the chat here, so please let me know if I'm rambling on. Okay.
No, all good.
We'll press on. So yeah, clients mandating this. Reckitt, for example, have mandated 70% of their production has to happen in virtual by the end of next year. I'm speaking with some producers, and the two-way document now. Okay, I want a budget and I want a director's treatment. Now there's 3 documents now. There's a budget, there's a director's treatment, and there's a carbon analysis. And I was speaking to someone at, I won't say the production company, last week, but their director was fundamentally told, if your treatment isn't virtual, you're not going to win the bid. You're not going to get the gig. So that that's a big incentive. I'm not going to give an opinion on whether I agree with that or don't agree with that, coming from a director's background, but it's a pretty big incentive if you're told you're wasting your time unless it's a virtual campaign. Couple of things to think about here. And this is more to do with scheduling. Pre-production, production, and post-production. Forget those 3 names. When you work in virtual, it all becomes production because you're doing things in pre-production that you would traditionally be doing in post. You're looking at assets, you're building background, you're basically taking a lot of your post workflow and putting it into what we would have traditionally called pre. The same with certain elements. You'll probably find that you'll have your DOP on board a bit earlier, but then potentially they won't be needed to attend the grade or the coloring. So Movie Magic, or I don't know what budgeting spreadsheets are using, you can kind of throw it out the window. You've got to readdress the whole production workflow. There's not going to be time in an hour to cover this off very much, but by all means, I can have a chat with anybody individually or talk about how it changes. I suppose a classic example was a producer I know very well came in a couple of weeks ago and said, Rob, I've got a 2-day shoot and a 1-day prep. And I said, no, you've got a 3-day prep and a 1-day shoot. Because basically the amount, if you've prepped your job well for virtual, the amount you can shoot in a day is incredible. You can just motor through it. And if you tried to go into a virtual shoot with just 1 day's prep, and then you have all your crew there the next day, you're going to be firefighting for the 2 days. So basically it's prep and more prep, just as an overthought. And as I say, I'm happy to go through individual scripts or schedules with anybody who wants to go through that. I said a bit of myth busting, so I suppose I should bust a few myths. Creating digital backgrounds is time consuming and prohibitive expensive. 3 years ago, yes. Now, that's not the case. I'm going to show you a clip now where the background was a still. We then took the still into Unreal. We turned it into a 2.5D image. The only things that you might spot that are moving, I got them to animate little lights on the tops of buildings, do not crash your helicopter here lights, and I got them to animate the river a little bit. This, if you imagine this script landing on your desk and thinking, how am I going to do this? And also, how am I going to do it in half a day? it sort of shows you the power of VP. So let's give this a go. I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to show you that was, to get a script where you say, okay, I want the light to be the same. I want it to be consistent. I want a guy doing parkour on the top of a building. You'd be tearing your hair out for all sorts of reasons. That would have been, I was speaking with the first AD. He said, that would have been a 3-day shoot if they'd had to go traditionally with it. So to come into the volume and to shoot it in half a day sort of gives you the power of schedule saving, if you like. I said that it doesn't need to be that expensive to do VP. Just some thoughts about how you can source backgrounds and why they don't need to be ferociously expensive. You can go on the web and pick up photographic backgrounds, speak with your volume, find out what the deliverables are, and in some instances a high-res still is going to be enough. 360 and 230-degree driving plates. An awful lot of work that comes into the volume is car work, interior cars, and that's both for long-form drama and for commercials. You can pick these up from libraries or specially shot. I think there's 2 companies in Cape Town that are doing plates. I think Southern Brothers have a rig, and I believe that Filmscape have a rig. So either you go and source from their library, or they'll shoot something bespoke for you. Not that expensive a way of doing it. If you need to be somewhere else in the world, and I think this is quite interesting for the South African market, is to be able to just pull in a New York background or a Shanghai background, then those libraries exist for that. I spoke a bit about 2.5D. It's a combination of stills and live action footage and CGI. It's kind of a hybrid between your nirvana of fully 3D images and your stills images, but very, very popular, largely because it's cost effective and it's quick. Photogrammetry and LiDAR scanning, take 2 people in, LiDAR scan your location, take it away. You're going to get into all sorts of IP conversations about who owns the rights to what you've scanned and whether they should still be paid a location fee. But it's a very popular way of going forward. I look at the contracts for IP on photogrammetry, and they're very much, you could almost cut and paste a talent contract. The cost is going to depend on how long you want it for, what markets you want it for, what exclusivity you want it for, and the price goes up accordingly. You can really take an artist's contract if you're negotiating an IP contract based on photogrammetry. Kit bashing is classic. This goes right back to where virtual production came from Fortnite and Epic Games. Epic Games have got a huge resource online of material that you can download for free. And kit bashing involves taking those assets and making it look a little bit different. In the same way, how many times have we tried to make the unfinished road in Cape Town look like different places? It's the digital equivalent of that. Set dressing an existing location in such a way that people think they haven't seen it before, and it makes it specific to your project. And then finally, full 3D assets. That's where you would go out and commission. Zara have just done it. Zara have just commissioned a global store. McDonald's are doing it and have certainly done it with some success in America, and they're looking at doing it here in the UK, having a digital store. They don't have to close stores. They don't have any of those issues, and basically it exists on a hard drive. They can pull it up wherever they want. I've heard people saying another myth that VP doesn't work for 1-day shoots. You need to have a big, long campaign because it's not cost effective. Just going to show you something that was shot in a day. It was actually shot in a little bit less than a day. It's 5 locations, a simple Not a big budget, I hasten to say, on this one. Quite a small budget, but it shows the effectiveness of VP and location moves.
Vous voulez être toujours plus performante. Vous la jouez intégrale. Être impeccable. Alors vous avez le droit d'exiger un résultat parfait en prenant soin de votre peau. Vite Expert, une nouvelle gamme plus performante. Vos poils, votre exigence, nos produits.
I mean, I don't know your feelings, but I think that's kind of like quite a good way of getting around 5 locations in a day, and keeping the art direction and the styling all in context. The next one is an early use. It's going to limit my creativity, and there's been resistance from creatives for using the technology. I totally get it. Why do I want to embrace this new technology? I can't be as creative as I used to be. My argument is, and particularly when you start writing for the wall, you can be incredibly creative. I'm just going to show you this one. This is one of the better examples, I think, of passage of time and change of location.
Very superstitious writings on the wall. Very superstitious letters by the fall. 13-month-old baby broke the looking glass. See me in the daydream. Keep me going strong. You don't want to save me. Sad and soft. When you believe in things, but you don't understand that there comes a superstition ain't the way.
That was done by Publicis Italy. Great use of foreground art direction and digital assets in the background. I struggle to see the joins, and I love trying to find the joins. So yeah, I just think that's a really, really, really good example. Anything from you guys at this point? Because as far as the presentation goes, we're probably a bit more than halfway through. Is there anything we want to pick up on, or are you happy to wait till the end?
I think carry on, Rob. I think let's just keep going. Thanks.
Okay, absolutely. The interesting thing with that last one, and I think this is quite important to the South African market, and certainly the service market in South Africa. I've had a number of worried phone calls from service producers in South Africa who said, "Oh, no one's going to come here anymore because they're all going to be doing it in the UK, or they're all going to be doing it in Hungary, and they can take the locations to there." What I've found is that very often when I was based in South Africa, we might lose a script on the basis of 2 frames on a storyboard because we don't have, I don't know, a Brooklyn brownstone building, or we don't have classic palm beaches in Cape Town. Sure, we can go elsewhere to find them. And the whole job would go somewhere else for the sake of 1 or 2 frames. Whereas now, what you can do when you're bidding on a script is to say, okay, yeah, we can do 16 of these frames on location, and rather than client and agency and everybody travel off somewhere else to do the other 2, we can do the other 2 frames here as well. So it actually becomes a selling point. It's a double-edged sword. Sure, some work won't come down to South Africa because of VP, but I think there's a potential that work that wouldn't have come will come down to South Africa, because you can now hand on heart say we can shoot every frame on this board without compromise. My bugbear now, the next one, writing for the wall. Initially, everything that came across our desks was based on cost saving and was based on efficiencies and wasn't really based on thinking about how can I use this tech? What can I do with this tech that I couldn't previously have done? And using this piece of tech as an enabler. And I've got quite a good, I hope, quite a good example of that. Yeah, I mean, really take this to heart. I mean, the best results come when it's written for virtual and not simply adapted. You know, once you take on board that you can go anywhere in the world very quickly, you can freeze time, you can do 4 seasons. If you're doing, I don't know, a campaign for a hair product, you can shoot it you can script it to be shot in summer, winter, autumn. You can come through all 4 seasons and do it in a day. I mean, if I went to a cost controller with a script like that 5 years ago, they'd have wondered what I was smoking. So I think, you know, when you start thinking in terms of what can I do differently because virtual's a new tool for me, then there's some really exciting stuff. Here's a case study, Amazon Bloom. Dom and Nick from Outsider in London, they were in here shooting actually, I am actually at one of the studios today, that's why I said that. They were in here shooting a pop promo for the Chemical Brothers, which went on to be very, very award-winning. While they were in here, they got a script from Amazon while they were sitting in the studio, and it involved going on location and shooting a florist's, and the florist expands. It's about somebody's business growing. And they said, no, hang on a minute, let's do it in here. And let's not try and hide the joins, and let's make it look very theatrical, and let's make it look very graphic. So what I'll do is I'll show you back to back the commercial, and then more interestingly, the client's response to the commercial. And then we can have a chat about it afterwards.
Faith's Flowers wasn't living up to its name, but now she's using Amazon Business. With bulk orders that work around her schedule, plus easy ways to track spend, which Faith has the time to make it, well, fantastic. Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying.
So I'll run on to what the client thought. It was done in one shot. There was a motion control rig involved. And then obviously at the end, as we pull out of the shot, there's a digital set extension. But the next bit might show that a bit better.
1, 3, 5, 7, 8.
Faith's Flowers wasn't living up to its name, but now she's using Amazon Business.
A woman starts a small florist shop and with the help of Amazon Business turns that tiny stall into an incredible sort of emporium of flowers, and we see it happening before our eyes.
The story of Bloom is about a small business owner who has a dream of success, a dream of growth, and this story is really about Amazon Business supporting that solo entrepreneur, letting them know that we can be a strong partner for smart business buying for all of their business supply needs and all of their procurement needs.
Dom and Nick have been fantastic directors. They've brought this whole concept to life in a really engaging way. Using the volume studio here and using technology that I don't think has ever been used in commercial before and is rarely used in film, it was a great idea.
We're on a virtual production set composed of an array of screens in which we put the content digitally using Unreal Engine. What that enables us to do is to have accurate lighting on the talent and also pre-plan the content before we put that on screen. We can choreograph the action with what's on the screen live rather than just doing that on a green screen and keying and putting that content in afterwards.
There's a lot of complicated technical steps that go on with a technology like this. You kind of have to dual path it. You have to do rehearsals with a physical crew and props, but at the same time you're building the set in 3D space, so you have to review each piece and then very creatively figure out how to merge them together. And then when you get here, you get to see both the previs and that physical rehearsal kind of perfectly mesh, which was fantastic. And Dominic guided us through all of that seamlessly.
In a volume like this, you could take any landscape from anywhere in the world and place your actor, your director, your producer, and replicate that environment. The technology is so advanced now with camera tracking, with using Unreal and the kind of 3D speculative environment builder, that we could be anywhere. You're reducing your carbon footprint on the world, which is an enormous benefit, I think, to a lot of productions, because, you know, sustainability and all of those things are massive factors in production now.
Being on this virtual shoot has just been such an amazing opportunity for learning. And hopefully this approach will scale, because this is really a truly sustainable approach for shooting.
As a creative director, it's incredibly exciting to be able to see the newest technologies, see what we can do with them, and bring these incredible stories to life.
Which means Faith has the time to make it, well, fantastic. Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying.
So I'm quite enjoying looking at some of these because it's saving me from talking quite so much. I want to share a VP shoot with you, which was for Uber One. I don't think this could have been done any other way than in virtual production. Or the end result couldn't have been achieved rather in any other way other than virtual production. The first assistant director, Rob Brishan, and the producer, Nell, came in and said, you know, virtual production's going to unlock this for us, hopefully. The director's an amazing director, a guy called David Shane from the States. He works with talent, A-list talent all the time. That's a comedy director, really amazing bloke to work. Great to watch him work. Great to see what he's like on set. So I just want to run through. There's two different motivations here. This is what Nell said to me when she came through, and I felt her pain. Basically, she had two A-list talent. She had Asa Butterfield, Robert De Niro. She had 8 hours with De Niro on set. She had a director needing to do day and night scenes, and also he fancied some fireworks at the end. The secrecy of the project was a massive consideration. If we go out on the road with Robert, the irony of Robert De Niro being back out on the road in a taxi it didn't escape anybody. So decided to shoot in a studio for one day and to do the wide shots on location afterwards. This was designed to be a 2-camera, 2-day shoot. David, in the end, ended up shooting it 5 cameras. And it was also designed to be a 60-seconder. But this is what we ended up with.
Hey, Robert. Do you mind?
Yeah. No.
So, you eat food?
Do I eat food?
Yeah.
Yeah, I eat food. You eat food?
Yeah. I had food for breakfast.
Oh, good. Well, good for you.
Do you go places?
Do I go places?
Yeah. Places.
Yeah, I go places. You go places?
I love places. I went to this place just now.
Which place is that? Here?
Yeah. I was there, and then now I'm here.
You were there and you came here. Wow. Look at that. We both eat food and we both go places.
And that's when I knew I was going to be better.
Lost the sound. Is that just me?
Oh, have you? Hang on.
Best friends with Robert De Niro.
It's back.
Did you say something?
No.
I showed him Uber One, a membership to save on our 2 favorite things, eating food and going places.
Cool.
Which he thought was very cool. And then we did those things.
Boring. You don't like it?
No, it's not you. Really?
A lot of people don't realize that I started out as a magician.
No, really?
Mm-hmm.
Magician?
Yeah.
Yep. What?
No, it's gonna pull a quarter out of your ear.
Oh.
It's too late now. It's all right. Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, that's very cute.
Cup holder.
Nope.
Car.
Nope. What is that? Wow. What is that?
It's my serving ritual.
Ouch.
You go with us. We can be cats.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not really, but you know.
But why would you want to be a cat? You're a human. Cats should want to be humans.
I'd quite like to be a cat.
Thank you, Naveed.
About 5 miles down the road here, I can take you to a great view.
Well, let's go.
Let's go.
Uber One, a membership for people who eat food and go places.
So that one, yeah, we were hugely lucky to have that. It made me feel very old because all the young people on the set said, hey, there's the guy from Sex Education and who's the old guy with him? And yeah, it's made me suddenly realize there's different generations in the film industry now. That 4-minuter or 3 minutes 15-seconder came as a result of working in the volume. That nuanced performance came directly as a result of being in the volume. You would not have got that performance directing someone on a low loader through a walkie-talkie. David was right by the side of the car, just feeding lines, just really nuancing the performance. And I'm absolutely convinced that wouldn't have happened any other way other than being done in the volume. The other thing that the 60, because there's so much sort of slight embarrassment and pregnant pauses, the 60 kind of didn't work on its own. So when they did the 90 and they had enough material to do the 90 and the 3-minuter, it gave context to the shorter cuts. And, you know, in the end result, the producer came to me with the producer's requirements, but to me the creative outcome was that the nuanced performances from De Niro and Butterfield were just perfect from the set. Got cinema release on the long, and then as I said, a coherent campaign. British Arrows Gold, Cannes Lion Gold, Syncope, D&AD, everybody likes to have those on the cabinet shelf. So really, that's, to my mind, you know, if anybody's doubting going into virtual production, there's a really good example of why you should do it. Again, a lot of press accolades. That's the other thing we're finding with virtual is clients are getting a secondary benefit from shooting in virtual because it's still quite new. They're gaining a lot of coverage in campaign. They're getting a lot of coverage in the press because they are working within virtual. So, you know, there's advertising and then there's marketing on top of advertising coming from it. Just about finished in terms of the presentation, but dying to hear your thoughts and you know, answer specific questions. But I just thought it worth sharing a couple of things that I've overheard when I've been wandering around on the studio floor. Everybody seems to go out here saying, oh my God, I wish we'd have this tech on. Everybody's had a nightmare shoot where they can relate to using virtual production. 1 second. I'm never freezing to death on a night shoot again. Yeah, the low loader syndrome or being stuck outside, you know, being able to go from day to night instantly indoors in a nice warm studio. People seem to like it. I had to go up to a producer on a job. We had a technical issue and it was going to take about 20 minutes to fix. And I had to go up to the producer and say, hey, you know, we're going to have to wait 20 minutes. I'm really sorry. One of the servers has gone down. We just need about a 20-minute fix. And she looked at me and said, yeah, I don't mind waiting. It's not like the sun's going to set. So it's quite a relaxed atmosphere filming within a volume, strangely enough. And yeah, why didn't the agency offer this solution earlier? I've had that from a client. They're never happy never completely happy. So they loved it so much that they wanted to know why they hadn't been offered it before, which I thought was quite amusing. Just a couple of takeaways. It's not a silver bullet. I'm not here to sell you virtual production. I love shooting on location. Sometimes I shoot on location. Sometimes I turn scripts away. I get studio owners getting very frustrated with me because someone will come with a script and I'll say, you don't want to be doing that in virtual. You know, there's only 3 shots there that benefit you to do in virtual. Go and do it on location. And the other thing for me, feel very strongly, technology in VP. It's brilliant, but it's just another tool in the arsenal. It's it's an enabler for the creatives, and to my mind, the creative should always come first. I'm just going to leave an image up on the screen that I particularly love. I don't know if you're familiar with this photograph. It was done by Charles Ebbets. And he was commissioned by the Rockefeller Center to go up and take this photo of the building workers up at the top of the Rockefeller Center. And I sort of liken it to virtual production because what they don't tell you was there were 3 photographers sent up that day. I'm stealing this story, by the way, from Elliot Harris. So if he's seeing this in recording, I apologize. He's an executive creative director of Reckitt. He's a global creative director at Reckitt. But the fact 3 photographers went up there and Charles's photos were chosen was because he adopted a very different approach to the other 2 photographers, just like you might do in virtual production. And this was Charles's approach. And I just love that image. And I think it's true for all things with advertising, and particularly moving into virtual production, you need risk to stand out. So thanks for listening. I've overrun by 5 minutes on the presentation side, but we still got plenty of time for any Q&A that you might have or any specific questions. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Rob. Let's get my video back on. Thank you, and sorry I was a few minutes late. I apologize for that.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time and for taking us through that. I have got the document which I can share with the rest of the team so they can go over in their own time as well. Does anybody have any questions for Rob?
Hi, I do. Hello, Rob.
Thank
you very much for a very informative session. All I want to say, I've got plenty of questions, but it's mostly directed to things I'm exploring for a client. So I'm going to send you my email address. If you and I can possibly have a private meeting, that would be fantastic.
Of course. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Silke, I'll send you Rob's email address directly.
Great. Thank you.
No, everybody seems to be happy.
So, Kathy, I've got a question.
Yes, Gillian.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you very much. That was incredible. And that Uber ad, when it came out, I thought was phenomenal. So really interesting to see how they did it. So thank you for those examples. This is probably a very stupid question because I'm here from the ACA point of view, not production. But where are we in South Africa? Do we have to do these things overseas? Do we have anything here that's similar? Is there any plan to get something here that's similar? Like Cape Town Film Studios, is there innovation or investment happening locally?
There's a permanent stage, I know because I came down to help set it up, Atlantic Studios, which is called Filmscape, and that's a joint venture with Homebrew and Atlantic Studios, and they're funny enough, they rang me up about a job yesterday, and they're fairly so that's a plug and play, ready to go solution.
And is it the same sort of scale like the ones you've shown us from London?
It's not quite as big a scale. I mean, the thing with the Aries stage is the creme de la creme. There's a huge amount of investment, but the technology doesn't change, and you can still be innovative within a much smaller stage. You know, a lot of Reckitt Benkisa's work and a lot of Unilever work is getting done in Poland, and now they're going to Romania with it because that, costs are driving everything down. So there's also one called Three Peaks, which I think Hilton has worked at. So
They actually presented to us as well. They have presented to us, so we do know them.
okay, yeah. And there's a smaller one in Joburg called Brit Studio, I believe. And there are a couple of companies in Joburg that are offering virtual production, but reading through their stuff or the calls that I've had, they don't have a permanent setup. They would do you a pop-up, what they call a pop-up that would literally go up for the shoot. For commercials, I think I'm not sure how viable pop-ups are because it's adding days to put them up. You've still got to test the screens. You've still got to shoot. So from a commercials perspective, going into a ready-made studio is always going to be the best option. If it's a long-form feature and you're in the studio for a month, then a pop-up makes more sense.
Great, thank you very much.
And also the technology exists there. The guys can also provide you with content. That's the other thing. I mean, some of the South African guys are providing content globally, so you can get your content.
Cool. Thanks, Rob.
That's okay.
Anyone else?
Yes, please, Kathy. It's Cindy at the Brave Group. I was just wondering, what is the post-production process versus the traditional on-location post-production process that we are doing now? Does it become shorter? And in terms of budget, is it lesser than what we're currently paying?
What you should be doing, if you're working within virtual, you should be reducing your post time because you're going to be aiming to leave the shoot at the end of the day with something approximating final pixel. So if you've got a job that's traditionally very it's going to be script dependent, but if you've got a job that's traditionally very post heavy, then yes, you'd be reducing your post. I mean, in a perfect world, people call it final pixel. I'm leaving with final pixel. What you're probably going to need to do is, in any event, is to go away and do a conform and a grade and a caption pass, I'm guessing. Things which, if you were working within green screen or if you're adding elements, then obviously that would happen on the shoot rather than happen in post. Huge impact on this from a sustainability point of view. Everybody thinks, oh, we're saving a fortune because we're not traveling people. The biggest single user carbon footprint is long post production, where you've got stuff being stored, where you've got servers being cooled. So yeah, there's a big sustainability impact if you've got a very post heavy shoot and you bring it into virtual.
Okay, thank you.
I presume then costs would come down because you're not spending so much time in post-production.
Absolutely, yeah. You're front loading it. You're probably going to be spending a bit more in pre, and then you're going to be spending in post. But if you've got a campaign and you're going to keep returning there, like whether it's Checkers or whoever or whatever, where you've got a location you're going to continually go back to. Every time you reshoot with that same asset, your costs are coming down. Both your costs and your carbon footprint are coming down disproportionately because you've already built that asset, if that makes sense.
It does. Your ARRI stage in the UK, do you have an idea of what that costs per day? Just a ballpark. I'd be curious to know.
I know what it costs for feature films. What I'm trying to persuade them to do literally at the moment, and I've got a meeting about it tomorrow, is to do a modular offering whereby you can switch on different bits of the wall. Because if someone wants to come in and film someone pouring a bowl of soup in Thailand and change the background to someone pouring something else and it's a mid shot, you don't need all of that.
The whole studio.
Yeah. The costs at Filmscape, I think they're on their website. And Charles, you should speak. Charles Murray at Homebrew looks after that studio. And I know they have a price differentiation between if it's long form, short form, or commercials, international commercials versus local commercials. So they're very price sensitive.
Curious.
But for a feature film coming into ARRI stage in London would be about £35,000 a day.
Cool. Just curious.
Yeah, sure. Because we try, and you'll find this with most of the virtual studios, because they want people to come in well prepped, they tend to very heavily discount the prep days, like traditional pre-build days or pre-light days or whatever. They tend to
in
be,
any studio.
because they want to encourage you to be prepped, ready for the shoot day. Those tend to be fairly heavily discounted. If I've got time, just very quickly for one anecdote, just to say, because I think this puts it in context of when to use it and when not to use it, and why you should be writing for the wall. And I may have shared this with you, Kathy, but I had a Vodafone come in with a script, and it was a couple about to get married or about to get engaged, and there's someone hiding in the bushes with the latest Vodafone filming the engagement process, and the guy's asking his partner to get engaged, but he keeps bottling it, and they walk round and round this lake, and at the end of it, finally he asks his partner if he'll marry him, and he says yes. So you've got the couple there, and they said, what about this for virtual? And I said, well, the only benefit of doing this in virtual is you're getting weather cover. It's one location, it's daytime, it's not, I don't know why you would want to do that script here. But I said, what about for the same money, he's at the top of the Eiffel Tower, he goes to propose and he gets scared. Next time you see him, he's on the Great Wall of China and he goes to propose and he gets scared. And so you can start to write and say, actually, I can have real fun with this. And to my mind, you get a much more memorable piece for the same money. So it's not purely on, I mean, I know we're all under budgetary pressures, but it isn't, if you can kind of go, for the same money, I can write a multi-location, multi-time of day piece, that starts to get really exciting.
Makes sense. And then it makes sense. Yeah. Then it makes sense to go that route. It's a good way of thinking of things. It has been really great having you, Rob. Thank you so much. I don't think it's anyone, 2 more minutes if anybody wants to ask one more question. No.
What I would say is the second we end the call.
Hang on.
Oh, yeah, please.
Someone wanted to say something.
Random question. Rob, I wanted to find out in terms of skill set of the CGI artists.
Yeah.
And someone's experience with using, the assets from Epic Games. I can't remember what the library's called. But have you worked with South African CGI team members that are quite emerged in Unreal Engine now?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, what the interesting thing is, Post were very suspicious of virtual production because they could see themselves losing a revenue stream. The not so clever ones just slagged off virtual production and said it was no good. The clever ones adopted it and embraced it, and started using it. So yeah. Also, any studio you go to, they'll have a list of deliverables and they'll work in tandem with your VFX house. So if an agency's got a long-term relationship with a VFX house, they will they'll sort of handhold them through the process, if you like.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Very, very awesome presentation. It's been so informative. Thank you.
And anybody who, because the second the call ends, I know someone's going to have a question, or script's going to land on someone's desk tomorrow morning, and they're going to think, I wish this. So please reach out with anything at all that comes up, or any questions. And I've said to Kathy, very happy, share my email address, whatever, anything I can do to support, more than welcome.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining. I appreciate you taking the time. And thank you, Rob. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.